Let's explore hacks to quickly master meditation. This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit. The question begins with the title, Advice for a Beginner. The person wrote, and let me quickly adjust this. I've heard a lot about meditation throughout my life, but have never had success with it. I'd like to try it though, and hopefully see some sort of success. I have a few questions, if y'all wouldn't mind helping me. What should the expectation be? What's the goal from this practice? That's an excellent question. I'm not sure how old you are, but back in the 90s, our computers had a defrag process. And about once a week or so, we'd run the defrag program, and lo and behold, our hard drive would work more efficiently afterwards. I'm told that since some hard drives are made of glass now, they're no longer in vogue. Meditation is the same way. Overuse of our prefrontal cortex can excite our amygdala, increasing anxiety and aggression. Can further overuse of our prefrontal cortex or exhaustion of our prefrontal cortex can elicit symptoms of depression, which nobody wants. We have a we have an autonomic nervous system comprised of a sympathetic and a parasympathetic nervous system, which are optimized for effortless mindfulness and meditation. And what these things really do is help to defrag our mind, help us to be the peaceful, centered, spontaneous, loving, resourceful person that our dog already thinks we are. I've heard a lot. Everything from emptying your mind to ending up in deep psychedelic-like trances. I've never been able to achieve either. I don't know what I should try to do while practicing this and what I'm aiming for other than sitting in silence. How long should I try for each session as a beginner? And by the way, I'm going to give you detailed instructions before this is done. I'm not going to just leave you with vague generalities. So let's start right here. How long should I try for each session as a beginner? I recommend beginning for 5 minutes every 12 hours or so the first week. The first week is the hardest, although it's the shortest. You're unfamiliar with the whole process. Give yourself permission to have a learning curve. Give yourself permission to be cranky and petulant. That's okay. By the second week, you may feel comfortable with bumping the duration of your meditation to 10 minutes, practiced once every 12 hours or so. Now, life can get in the way of a perfect schedule. That's okay. If you have to wait 13 hours or 10 hours, that's fine. Let us not beat ourselves too much. Let us not beat ourselves up too much. By the third week, we could feel ready to meditate for 15 minutes every 12 hours or so. By the fourth week, we could feel ready to meditate for 20 minutes every 12 hours or so. I'm sure you've noticed the pattern right here. By the conclusion of the 15th week, you could feel really comfortable sitting for a 15-minute lesson and a 16-minute group practice over the live stream every 12 hours, whether you're able to practice live or just use the recorded version. That way, over the weeks, you're not only practicing and training your body and getting familiar with the techniques, but you're learning Buddha's system so that you can actually master it. Because all enlightenment really is simply the mastery of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. When I was a child, I found the mastery of the skill of tying my shoes to be daunting. After much time and repeated instructions and tears, eventually I got so good at tying my shoes that by the time I was ready to enter first grade, I could tie those bad boys spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. That's all mastery is, whether it's riding a bike, learning how to write cursive, or learning the Buddha's techniques for truly transformative mindfulness and meditation. How long should I try for each session as a beginner? 10 to 15 minutes can be hard sometimes, but it is doable. So here's the thing. You do not want to cultivate an aversion to meditation. Gutting it out for 10 to 15 minutes is not ideal. Sit for 5 minutes. And don't progress beyond 5 minutes until 5 minutes is so easy you actually crave a challenge. I call that experience divine impatience, as opposed to Bette Midler's divine madness, which is completely different. Have heard of people doing it for up to an hour or longer. I definitely couldn't do that. Would small 10 to 15 minute sessions of it still have any sort of benefit? Yes. If you led a sedentary lifestyle and chose to enhance your diet and start exercising, walking around the block even once is so much better than just sitting on the couch playing Xbox. Similarly, beginning a meditation journey, learning how to sit, learning the specific mental techniques on a prescribed progressive schedule is ideal. What do I do about my damn back pain? To sit up straight and try to calm my mind can be difficult, as I have ADHD tendencies. My mind runs a million miles a minute, so when dealing with back pain, I tend to hyperfixate on that often. I work in the trades, so my body hurts regularly. On top of the back pain, as mentioned, I struggle majorly to silence my mind. My friend, I would be surprised if you didn't. So I've got let's begin with some broad brushstrokes. I've got some good news for you. The reason I can offer you hacks is because I too have challenges. So I'm going to tell you my challenges, not to get in a pissing contest, but just so that you know that I too have had to find hacks, and these hacks could very well benefit you. So I have both ADHD and autism, which have been exacerbated by fetal alcohol exposure, birth trauma brain damage, PTSD, Ehlers-Danlos disorders, which does a number on my organs and joints and muscles and connective tissues and immune system. and myalgic encephalomyelitis. So yeah, I've got a bunch of things that ensure my life is an exciting adventure. So the techniques I'm going to give you work. So I'm going to start off telling you what you already know. Do not ignore pain. Do not ignore pain. We evolve the ability to perceive pain not because of some caprice of a real or imagined celestial entity, but as a survival mechanism. We ignore pain at our peril. I can't tell you how many butch special forces guys go online and tell you that pain is in your head and just push forward. And these guys wind up ruining their bodies in their 20s, and then they're trapped in a needlessly crippled body for the remainder of their lives. You are not a special forces guy on an extraction mission. You're just a regular, everyday slob like me, trying to make the most of his life. Please respect your limitations. The more we understand our pain, the more we... So pain is our body's cry for an unmet need, whether it's water or sleep or fresh air or exercise or a diet rich in fruits and vegetables and seeds and nuts and legumes and grains and mushrooms and all that kind of good stuff, or whether it's making adjustments to your posture, or whether it's going to see a physician if you need to. Listen to your body's cries for pain or cries of pain. So having said that, I think it would be most judicious to begin with teaching you the art of sitting, if I might. So what I'm going to do is press button 4, and we'll be on our way. Welcome to the living room of the apartment where I stay. There is a myth that pain is your body's way of burning bad karma. Bullshit. Pain is an important message. Listen to your body. There's some people who insist you have to sit in a full lotus posture with your hands in a specific posture on special cushions. You have to spend hundreds of dollars on these cushions and spend hundreds of dollars on books. And oh yeah, by the way, join this group for a fee. That's malarkey. You can do it cheap. You can do it all, regardless of how many challenges you have. I promise. There is no magic sitting position. There's no magic hand gesture. It's all about what works. So most people either sit in a room where there's a shag rug or there's hardwood floors. As you can see behind me, I have hardwood floors. So the only two pieces of equipment I use, other than a laptop so I can hang out with you good folks, is a Mexican-style yoga blanket and a zafu, both of which are optional. So let's pretend you don't have any budget whatsoever. That's fine. I'm going to get up and show you what I'm using, or move some things around. Oh boy! So, this is my space heater for my lower back. This is my Zoff. You can get it for like $50 on Amazon. This is a yoga blanket. You can get it for like $20 on Amazon. I'll teach you how to fold it in just a few minutes. This is a hardwood floor. Whether it's a hardwood floor or whether it's concrete, that's the ultimate challenge. So, allow me to tantalize you with my ankles. So the ankle bone here, this is known as the crown of the ankle. And of course, it's on the outside too. If you rest this crown of your ankle on a hard surface, that's going to be painful. Now, as you probably already know, in your forearm you have two arms. You have the radius and the ulna, and they twist to allow your hand to twist. Similarly, in your lower leg you have two bones as well. Did I say two arms? I should have said two bones. So in your lower leg you have two bones as well. You have a tibia and a fibia, and they, to a limited degree, also twist. So that's useful. You can twist your leg in such a way that it's your instep that rests on the hard surface and not the outer edge of your foot. Allow me to demonstrate. This, ouchie, ouchie. This, doable. So ask any kid who's ever been in ballet class, and they'll remind you, we don't turn out from the knee, we turn out from the hips. The knee is just a hinge joint, like on a door. The hip is a ball joint, and it's almost omnidirectional. So to adjust for a comfortable ankle experience, not only do you point your foot and twist, the twisting goes here, but it also goes to your hip. That's very, very important. So when we look at the most ancient Buddhist statuary, the Buddha was not depicted as sitting in a full lotus posture. It was originally depicted as sitting in a quarter lotus posture. And that's when you just take the opposite leg, point it and twist it, and allow one shin to rest upon the other. Now you might, and at the first time you try that, it might feel impossible. You might get hung up like that. That's fine. Don't force it. Just let it be. And as the week elapses, your body will remember how to sit like this from when you were a child. Yes, I've got a big belly. That's because of autoimmune-oriented digestive disorders. I assure you, a big belly is not the side effect of meditation. So this is how you can sit on a hardwood surface. Now, I'm going to assume if you have internet access, you probably have the wherewithal to acquire a yoga blanket. So I'm going to show you how to fold that right now. By the way, if you're ever out and about and you want to meditate in a park, to be able to know how to meditate without a blanket is useful. And by meditate, I mean sit. Okay. This is a yoga blanket. I like using yoga blankets. Not only are they comfortable for the ankles, but you're going to sweat in meditation. Sitting is hard work, and to be able to unfold your yoga blanket and throw it in the wash and the dryer is great. Even if you have shag carpets, I still recommend a yoga blanket for hygienic purposes. So this is the yoga blanket, no big deal. I'm going to fold it in half vertically, thusly. So easy, even a boy can do it. And I'm going to fold it in half widthwise. I'm going to fold it in half widthwise again. And I take the edge that's most blunt and I put it in the direction of the space heaters for my lower back, because life's an exciting adventure. So I might as well show you what I'm doing right here. So on my hardwood floors, I have a place. I just kind of measure out three pieces of wood. 1, 2, 3. And that way, every time I set up, the blanket is in the same place. Because life can be messy. Sometimes consistency can be a comfort. And so, yes, we can sit on this just the same way I demonstrated all the way down. Here we go. Okay, so once again, it doesn't matter which leg you use. In fact, I alternate legs, just listening to my body. If one SI joint starts barking, I use the other SI joint. But while we're here, we can discuss that there are many sitting positions. Some sit with their legs like this. It's terribly easy but not sustainable, but it's very fatiguing for the muscles. Some sit with their feet touching each other, then the Ganesh posture, which is very, very easy to get into. I find it a bit taxing on my joints, but that's just me. There's the Burmese method, also known as the Tara method or the royal posture, where one leg is in and the other is out. I don't like it. I find it puts asymmetric pressure on my SI joint, but you might love it. That's up to you. Let's see. Then there's the various lotus positions. There's the easy pose, where the left heel is under the right thigh, and the right heel is under the left thigh. Easy to get into, but kind of precarious, requires a lot of balance, and I don't really enjoy this. Then there is the quarter lotus, which I've already demonstrated. There is then the half lotus, which I'm not a big fan of. You simply rest one leg upon the other thigh, and in time, the gravity does its work, and the thigh comes down, not from the knee, but from the hip. And then in time, one can always switch out to full lotus posture. I find this to be elitist and unsustainable. I feel people who are muscular really can't maintain this pose for an hour in a sustainable way. Not a big fan. I really just prefer the quarter lotus. But wait, there's more. A variation for all those positions is to have a zafu under your tuchus. When I first started out, I could not afford a zafu. I just used a regular pillow. A zafu works much better. It is a sack with a circular hunk of bit of fabric, another circular hunk of fabric, and a flat hunk of fabric on the outside. So it creates a disc-like sack. And here is a zipper right here. Typically, they come with buckwheat hulls. In time, the buckwheat hulls compress. And so you can buy also from Amazon large funnels and bags of extra hulls to be able to put in here. It's messy. My tantric partner is pretty brilliant. She does this in a box so the hulls don't get everywhere. And this just gives you an additional variable. So I like to put this towards the far end of the yoga blanket. I like to place the tuchus right here, not here, but here. Wait. Hebrew grunting is not necessary. That's just an extra added plus. All right. Now I shall subject you to my face. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so here's the deal. The key to sitting is to rely more on your bones than your muscles. Muscles fatigue sooner than bones do. So what you want to do is pretend that you've taken a rope and you're not putting it here, but you're wrapping it around your jaw to your top of your head, and you're allowing it to run through a pulley suspended from the ceiling. And you have an invisible imaginary rope here, and as you pull it up, your head pulls up. And so the secret to impeccable posture is traction. Traction between our tush and our head. Now, here's a little known secret. We're wired to experience traction during our inhalation. We're wired to release the traction during our exhalation. So by setting space for the body, for the head and the tush to pull away from each other as we breathe in and then to relax as we breathe out is more sustainable. Working with our body, cooperating with our natural processes is the key to really making this work. In fact, it may even help you create some relief if you have, by applying gentle traction to your spine. Let's talk about hand positions. I've played with them all. I've rested my hands on my knees. I prefer to rest my hands in my lap because it has a coalescing effect on real or imagined subtle energies. The ancient Buddhists did not touch their thumbs. After there was a trade established between China and India, there was a cross-cultural influence and they started touching their thumbs together. Personally, for someone who I have challenges with my back, that's because of Ehlers-Danlos. And when I go like this, my chi or prana or lung, if you like Tibetan, coalesces in my lumbar spine and it causes me pain. And it actually causes my muscles to spasm. So I don't do that. I sit with everything just relaxed. It doesn't matter which hand goes on which. Once again, variety is the spice of life. So let's talk about the elbows. Some of your more rigid teachers, looking at you, Japanese Zen, will say the elbows must be out. Well, here's the funny thing. If your head is pulled up and your chin is tucked down, your shoulder blades will open naturally. So with an open shoulder blades, arms just hang naturally out. If you force your arms out to create an analog of a right position, you're going to strain this muscle right here. No one wants that. But if you adjust the pitch of your pelvis and the pitch of your chin, you can feel some play in your scapula, which is your shoulder blades. And that can help your arms to hang more sustainably by your side. So the trick is there's not some magic position that's going to make the heavens part and the angels come down to kiss you on the cheek, although that would be cool. We're just trying to find the most sustainable way to practice as pain-free as possible for as long as possible. Even though we're starting off 5 minutes, over the course of 15 weeks, that could become 75 minutes. And 15 weeks is only about 4 months. So, a third of a year, not a huge investment in time. So let's see. We've talked about posture. We've talked about shoulders. We've talked about hands. We've talked about tuchus. We've talked about legs. We've talked about ankles. We've talked about cushions. Talked about blankets. I think we're good to go. Okay. Now let's look. So I'm going to go back to. I'm going to tap button 5. There is great confusion when it comes to practicing and teaching meditation. Why is that? 2 reasons. The first is psychological. The second is lingual. We'll start with the psychological thing. Sturgeon's Law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, and not in the fun, tingly way. In Buddhist lore, we are told that the Buddha, who is also known as Gautama, had a foolish cousin named Devadatta, who thought it would be a splendid idea to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. So there are the majority of people The majority of authors, the majority of teachers tend to teach meditation from the perspective of being rigid and superstitious and controlling. Whereas the minority of the teachers, like the Buddha, thought it would be a good idea to be flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. I kid you not. The more rigid we are, the more cranky we are. The more flexible and laid back we are, the more kind we are. One system affects another system. So let's go to philosophy. In the West, we learned a lot from the ancient Greek philosophers. And they found that for people coming from the same culture, using the same language, living in the same time, confusion will still abound unless people first agree upon the definitions of the terms they're using. How much more complicated is communication if you're dealing with people from different cultures at different times in different languages? If there's that much confusion with one's own language and culture and time, then the confusion for translations is multiplied geometrically. Therefore, translation is more of an art than a science. And there's so much confusion when it comes to meditation instruction. That is why I teach meditation through the metaphoric lens of neuroscience, because functional magnetic resonance imaging does not lie. Many people teach that mindfulness is actually active concentration, and that meditation is actually active analysis. Neurologically, the only way we could perform those two acts, the acts of active concentration or active analysis, is by relying on such structures as our medial prefrontal cortex or our dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex. Now, our prefrontal cortex gets a bad rap. It's entirely useful. If you want to calculate something, if you want to compose, create a composition, if you want to edit text, if you want to write computer programming, this prefrontal cortex is your friend. If you want to do engineering, oh, hell yeah, sure. Chemistry, physics, the hard sciences, biology, yeah, sure, you betcha. This is your best buddy. But ask a personal trainer. If you only work out one muscle, number one, you're going to be unbalanced. Number two, you're going to injure that muscle, because all systems in our bodies require rest. There's only so much work each system in our body can do before it goes kaput. What happens when we overuse our prefrontal cortex? Functional magnetic resonance imaging studies, or fMRI studies, demonstrate that when we overuse our prefrontal cortex, this thing lights up. This lumpy thing the size of an almond, located in the metaphoric dungeon of our limbic system, this thing known as the amygdala, which functions as the seat of both anxiety and aggression. Let's face it, most of us do not meditate because we want more anxiety or aggression. How darkly ironic is it that when we follow most advice, we get the opposite results that we desire? So if you've been getting bad results, it probably is not your fault. It is probably because of the advice you've been getting. And let's take it a step further for some more bad advice. If we ignore these symptoms and just push it through because we've been listening to our inner Navy SEAL, and we continue to abuse our prefrontal cortex, to exhaust our prefrontal cortex, we could begin presenting with the symptoms of depression. which is horrible, which I would not wish on my worst enemy. But now I've got some good news for you. The Buddha taught an eightfold path. The seventh fold on the eightfold path is mindfulness. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we are accessing the sympathetic nervous system, which is located in the middle third of our spinal cord of all places. This bad boy has evolved to help us perceive, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. So the very mechanism in which this has evolved is not yang, it's yin. It's not rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. It's vulnerable, passive, visceral, and random. It's totally yin. So there is a physiological basis for yin. Now, this has evolved to help us perceive. To help us perceive what, you ask? Glad you asked. To help us perceive sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. To help us also perceive emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. This can feel overwhelming. Fortunately, there is meditation, the eighth fold of the Buddha's eightfold path. And every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we access our parasympathetic nervous system. Which has evolved to support physical relaxation as well as mental release. So just as mindfulness is all about vulnerability, which is typified by walking naked down the street, meditation is all about letting go. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel less tangible, could feel less permanent, could feel less solid, could feel less defining. Perhaps this is why the archetypes are depicted as being as translucent as a rainbow. But what about ADHD? ADHD, as you probably know, is all about dopamine production, dopamine utilization, dopamine storage, or lack thereof. If we have difficulty concentrating, it's not because we lack willpower, it's because we lack dopamine. And so before we practice mindfulness meditation, we're going to play with some very passive contemplations to stimulate the production of dopamine. We're then going to ride the wave of that dopamine for about 5 minutes. That's the secret to meditating when you have ADHD, to know the mechanism of your difficulties and then to find hacks for it. So, for instance, there are so many wonderful hacks for dopamine. I like doing Buddha bowing. I like using Tibetan-style Buddha bowing, which is a subject for a different video. I find it to be very stimulating. Exercise is a wonderful way to stimulate the experience of dopamine. Brisk walking meditation, wonderful way to punch up the dopamine. I like to, have a cold beverage before I meditate. That can be very, very bracing and release more dopamine. There are all sorts of fun things we can do. But sometimes your body just wants to rest, so you can rest. I like to lay down on the bed and watch YouTube videos of kitty cats being destructive. My fear is when a kitty cat Gets a head stuck in an empty box of tissues. I think that's the funniest thing. So anything that gives you joy is going to give you a burst of dopamine. And then we can use that burst of dopamine. We can apply the dopamine to our meditation. So I talked about what happens when we overuse our active concentration and our active analysis and overstimulate our amygdala. But did you know that working with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems in harmony with our breathing, passively perceiving and passively receiving, not only sedates our amygdala, but lights up this bad boy right here. This bad boy that looks kind of like a baseball mitt, a baseball glove. A catcher's mitt? Yeah, that's it, a catcher's mitt. The big kids call it the anterior cingulate gyrus. It functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy and compassion and love. A fringe benefit of training in mindfulness and meditation and harmony with our breathing is that we experience enhanced empathy. Just like we discussed over yonder, that the more flexible you are, the more laid back you are, the kinder you are, the more cooperative you are, the less of a dick you are. I should say, the less of a dick we are. This is why the greatest Dzogchen Lamas of Tibet have insisted that the highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived. An additional fringe benefit is this: when our choices and our utterances and our deeds flow in the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity, we're able to flow through life with greater bliss and ease and efficacy. I don't want to force my way through life. I want to flow through life. How about you? So at this point, we've talked about the mechanics of sitting, and we've talked about the neuroscience of mindfulness and meditation, as well as specific hacks for those of us who have ADHD. So what happens when you have ADHD and you begin to hyperfixate on pain you might be having? Well, number one, because you're practicing inhalation-oriented perception and exhalation-oriented release, you're going to be more prone to being perceptive to sudden flashes of insight. Not scattered spontaneity, but centered spontaneity. Consider this copulating couple. The gal, who's the color of a cumulus cloud, appears to be sporting with wanton abandon, which is beautiful. Her partner, the color of the azure sky, appears to be passively enjoying the same tantric union, thus reminding us that not all spontaneity is created equal, and that in addition to scattered spontaneity, there is the potential for centered spontaneity. Flowing from centered spontaneity, we might get insights as to subtle hacks we can apply to the various things in our life that may be creating or exacerbating back pain, which is awesome. But let's pretend that doesn't happen. Let's pretend you're sitting and you're noticing the back pain. What do? You don't fight it. You flow with it. As you breathe in, you use the universal label, which is the demonstrative pronoun this. As you exhale, you silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease. This does not help you get rid of pain. I wish it did. It would be cool, but it doesn't. Then what good is it? It helps us to make peace with whatever is there. Humans, one of the things that's helped us to survive is our ability to notice the presence of that which is harmful and the absence of that which is necessary. And it can really fuel our neurosis. We have two motivating systems. We have a dopamine-oriented system. We have an oxytocin-oriented system. Oxytocin-oriented system is about rewarding behaviors that we find fulfilling, which is beautiful. The dopamine-oriented reward system is about surviving long enough to procreate. It's just nitty-gritty. And it doesn't care how miserable it makes you, as long as you are breathing and humping, it's happy. Which is why we find great pleasure in anything that supports living long enough to procreate. Which is why we get such dopamine hits from drinking water when we're thirsty, from eating food when we're hungry, from sleeping when we're tired, from feeling sunshine on our face when we're cold, from enjoying shade when it's hot, to defecating and urinating when we need to. All these things are pleasurable. They release dopamine because they're necessary for survival. They help us live long enough to procreate, that's why orgasm is so pleasurable. It drives us to procreate. If procreation wasn't pleasurable, we wouldn't do it, and our species would end. Natural selection is basically a response. We have random duplicating errors in our DNA. That's evolution. And then we have the effects of those random copying errors. They're either inert, they're beneficial, or they're detrimental. If they're beneficial, we'll most likely procreate more, and that trait is passed on. If they're detrimental, we probably will procreate less or not at all, and that trait is lost. So there is no celestial entity with a microscope and a clipboard controlling our evolution. It's just those two processes working thusly. So I'm having an HD moment and I lost my train of thought. I do apologize. So we were talking, let me see if I can recapture my momentum. Yes. So we're talking about noticing pain in meditation. As we breathe in and silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this, we can spontaneously notice the pain. Not actively, but we can't help but notice it, even though we've probably spent most of our life trying to ignore it. And as we exhale, silently and mentally and passively recite the verb ease, we release our resistance to the pain. Many years ago, in the late 80s, I was a failed, telemarketer. And my boss was just kind and skilled and charming. And he was just so nimble-minded. He'd get on the phone. So how are things in San Diego and Cincinnati? How's your ball game doing? I hate baseball. Yeah, me too. Baseball sucks. He would just be so adaptive and so quick, and people would throw negativity at him, and he'd just dance with it. And I asked him one time, "Man, you're like Superman," I said. You know, just like Superman has chest that can deflect bullets, you can deflect negativity. What's your secret? How do you do it? And he said, you don't deflect it. You let it pass through you unobstructed. Mind blown. The key to doing that for everyday slobs like me and you is this ease. So we notice the pain as we breathe in. We physically relax and mentally release, even fractionally during our exhalation, because that's what we are already wired to do. It doesn't undermine our perception, but it enhances our tolerance. There is an old saying, let me know if you've heard this before. Whatever comes, let it come. Whatever stays, let it stay. Whatever goes, let it go. So notice the frequently used word is let, not force. I will kidnap you and make you mine and wash you and love you and call you George. No. We're just noticing passively. We are allowing, we are releasing. Think of it this way. What if our body and experience, what if our body was like a playhouse and our experience was like a play? We have to remember our role. We, you and I, are neither the producer, nor the director, nor the playwright, nor the thespian. We're just the schlub in the audience watching the antics of the thespians upon the stage. We're just there to enjoy the show. Sometimes the show is a comedy, sometimes it's a tragedy, sometimes it is a detective story, sometimes it is a penny dreadful. The key to spiritual success is noticing and releasing. At this point, having explained to you the theory of all these hacks, I would like to actually practice them with you together as a team after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. There we go. For more than 30 years, I spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each sect of Buddhism so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. So let's start with some chants to help us release some dopamine to help us to meditate. One moment. Thank you. So we're going to play with a mantra, and that people are scared that you'll be conjuring a demon. So let's just share with you my interpretation of the mantra. Please chant with me. Om, I invoke the mastery of love and release that can add Vajra diamond-like strength to a sattva mind. Who may all beings enjoy such mastery. My former wife is half Bengali, half white trash, and she helped me a lot with my Sanskrit pronunciation, and she hated the way most Americans mispronounced whom as hum. So I spell it. I've changed my spelling of it to honor the phonetics that was taught to me by kind-hearted members of the Indian community. So let us begin. So I've mentioned several times the Buddha's Eightfold Path. The second fold of the Eightfold Path is wishing love. So let's play with that right now. Please chant with me. May all minds of all beings now be as peacefully enlightened as the mind of a real or imagined Buddha symbolized by a tikle one syllable seed or bija mantra. So, it's not our job to actively visualize or actively believe or actively emote. All we do is play with these words. Silently, mentally, and passively, they will have an effect upon the neural pathways responsible for empathy. We're going to take all these words and coalesce them down into just 6 syllables. that we're going to divide between our inhalation and our exhalation. Now that we are familiar with these 6 words, we're going to recite them during our inhalation. One moment, if you please. And I'm back. Thank you for your patience. So, during our inhalation, we silently and mentally recite these 6 syllables. During our exhalation, let's physically relax as best we can, while striving to chant this 6-syllable mantra 8 times per breath. And if this is your first time joining me, please give yourself permission to have a learning curve. Om Vajrasattva 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 Om Vajrasattva. We switch gears from the mental to the interpersonal. Please chant with me. May all relationships or speech of all beings know be as joyfully loving as a real or imagined Buddha speech symbolized by your horizontal mala mantra. So mala just means that the mantra is wrapped in a circle. And horizontal means it's like a frisbee at your heart. Om Vajrasattva 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 Om Vajrasattva. May all bodies or forms of all beings now enjoy the beautiful Halcyon and Buddhist statuary, depicting the blissful body of a real or imagined Yadaman archetype of enlightenment such as Vajrasattva. Om Vajrasattva 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 Om Vajrasattva. May all circumstances or lots of all beings now have the good fortune or boon, as a Buddha's real or imagined paradise, pure land or Vanti. Om Vajrasattva Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva Hum Vajrasattva Hum Om Vajrasattva Hum Vajrasattva Hum Om Vajrasattva Hum Vajrasattva Hum. The first fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path is a view of reality that supports letting go. Let's play with that for the next 4 sets of exercises. But first, together as a team, let us meditate as transformatively as. As we relax into our exhalation, how good appearing circumstances are lots that we perceive during our inhalation. Feel as non-graspable or void as a Buddha's real or imagined paradise, pure land or Vanti. The context would infer that we're using the word void as a monosyllabic synonym for non-graspability. But really it's more than a synonym, it is a simile. Allow me to explain. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation can begin to feel as non-graspable as a vast, or I should say, as non-graspable as a vast empty void. What is a real-world example of a non-graspable vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky, a bright and beautiful cloudless day, which, although could be quite compelling to the eye, is rather intangible to the hand. So that's what we mean by void. Void is just a one-syllable way of saying all that. And now we're going to squish that down into 8 syllables. In Buddhist philosophy, this is known as Majjhimaka, where things are seen yet void. Later we will see how things are also felt yet void, heard yet void, and perceived or clear yet void. Om Vajrasattva Hum Vajrasattva Hum Om Vajrasattva Hum Vajrasattva Hum Om Vajrasattva Hum Vajrasattva Hum Om Vajrasattva Hum Vajrasattva Hum. As we relax into our exhalation, how good all sensual bodies or forms that we perceive during our inhalation. Feel as non-graspable or void as an archetype of enlightenment or yet dumb left light such as Vajrasattva. Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva. As we relax into our exhalation, how could all resounding communication that we perceive during our inhalation feel as non-graspable of what is a Buddha's real or imagined speech or mantra of light? Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva. As we relax into our exhalation, how could all perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, or imagination that we notice during our inhalation cognition, recollection, or imagination clearly noticed during our inhalation feel as non-graspable of what is a Buddha's real or imagined suitable or bija of light. Why do we play with these similes and metaphors? Because all mammals have evolved to think symbolically. Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva Om Vajrasattva Vajrasattva. And now, let's do some silent meditation. Let us bring whatever we spontaneously notice into the path of awareness and release as we sit nice and proper like a ancient Buddha statue. While silently, mentally, and passively reciting the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, we can watch the antics of mind as it perceives, emotes, intends, reasons, recalls, and imagines. As we silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease during our exhalation, we can relax into mind's non-graspable nature. Come, let us enjoy the show. Let us seal this morning's practice by chanting love and releases wishes for universal enlightenment and well-being. May all minds of all beings lucid yet void no be as peacefully enlightened as a Buddha's mind symbolized by a one-syllable bija. May all speech of all beings resounding yet void no be as joyfully loving as a Buddha's speech symbolized by mantra. May all forms of all beings sensual yet void no be as beautifully healthy as a yata mark type depicted in Buddhist statuary. May all lots of all beings appearing yet void no be as safely fortunate as a pure land of law represented in Buddhist paintings. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 9 3/4 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.